This piece has got two main elements to it. The first one is the pizzicato, and it's very useful and probably the only time in our lives where we need to push our left fingers down quite strongly so that the strings ring very clearly. A bit of vibrato would also help with that. And then the rest of the bar is up bow, short notes like this. It's tempting to go all the way to the heel to be closer for the pizzicato, but what sometimes happens is this. And it's just quite clunky and doesn't flow. Because the piece is in 6/8, it needs to really feel just in 2 beats in a bar. So those last couple of quavers of each up bow need to be quite light. So if we can keep them more in the middle, it gives a better musical effect. There are some changes of chords with the left hand. Most of them are very, very straightforward, but at the bottom of the second page, there's a slightly complicated few bars, so that would need to be taken out in isolation and practiced separately, and then obviously put back into the piece. So the first one, and this is bar 19, has got this chord, and then a bit of up bow, and then this, and then the fingers are all together, and then separate. For all of those, once the student learns them without the D's in the middle, then actually the changes, there's plenty time to do the changes. What is useful, rather than having like normal hand position, is if they bring their elbow out a bit and put their fingers a little bit more on the tips, it just clears the open strings in between the fingers, and that will give a lot more clarity, obviously. The first 2 bars are just the violin, so they're an introduction to the piano. So it might be useful to start quite strongly and then do a diminuendo in the second bar, so that when the piano comes in the third bar with the tune and we're still accompanying it, musically it's kind of flowed all the way forward there. When the violin gets the tune in the middle, it says with tenderness. It's a lovely tune. It's just full of character and colour. We have to be a little bit careful about our bow management. The first bar is fine, but if I use the whole bow on the next one, then I'm in the wrong part of the bow for this, because those first 2 notes are just 2 semiquavers slurred and they shouldn't have too much bow. So the thing to do is to use whole bow, less bow, tiny bit of bow, and then back to the heel like this. You can see that by kind of planning the mathematics around the bow division there, the phrasing still flows forward really nicely. If a student is struggling with that, sometimes you can just change the bowing to give some other options, but the separate 2 semiquavers mustn't get a bump no matter what. On the second page, there are some high notes. So in first position, they sound like this. But there's a suggested fingering to go up the A string. And of course, at this level, that's a really nice thing to do. And to practice that, it might be worthwhile doing some shifts just up and down the A string. So something like this. Or anything you want to make up just to get the movement up and down the string. Of course, when we're playing high, we need to bring our whole arm around and rotate it. So we're not just going up and stretching, we're coming around so our fingers can stay as curled as possible when we're up there. 2 lines from the end, it's possible to add a rit. It's got a really nice dark sound, but the violin needs to lead those few bars. something like that. And again, you can change bowings or fingerings as long as the musical integrity is really clear. So as long as it's got direction and shaping and it's really characteristic, that will be absolutely fine. Towards the end, the piano has a very long note, so the violin, like the beginning, is on its own. And it ends with a pizzicato, a G minor chord. And on that, again, pushing the fingers down a little bit more firmly than normal and spreading might be quite useful. Very tempting with the sharp bits at the end of the bow to scratch the violin, so just be very careful about that. So the last few bars could go something like this. For the pizzicato, generally in the piece, there's not time to hold the bow like that. And some students put their thumb underneath and then use a finger, first or a second finger, to actually do the pizzicato. There isn't time to keep doing that for most of the piece. So it's useful just to tilt the bow so the hair is pointing towards our faces, and just while keeping the main bit of our finger on the stick to keep it stable, just using the first joint like that, and quite flexible so it gets a really nice sound. At the very last pizzicato though, there is time to hold it like that if people would like, and then it's good to go diagonally away. For the best sound.